ago, I started talking about the changing landscape of adult ed, and actually, this has been a very good title because we keep on changing. And when I looked at what we talked about last year and the year before, we're still in the process of change. And much of it is headed in a really good direction, and I think long-term will be very good in terms of putting a bedrock foundation in for adult ed into our next generation. So I look on this as hopeful. First, there's higher expectations. When we first started with the Workforce Investment Act back in 1989, it was an improvement. We were looking at more standardization, we were looking at accountability, we were looking at making sure that we served all students, no matter where they started, from beginning ESL learners that were not literate in their native language and not literate in English, all the way through and serving them for transition into post-secondary. So it was a worthy and honorable goal. Where we're headed right now is much higher expectations that we are going to prepare people to be college and career ready and to have very clearly defined career pathways, very clear articulation, very clear partnerships and collaborations with our workforce partners, with our social service partners to provide wraparound services, to make sure that we provide the support that's needed for all of our adult learners, no matter where they come in on the continuum of learning, that we help them progress, not just to a high school diploma or a GED, but on into a career pathway where they can truly earn enough money to have a family-sustaining wage. So it's a shift from where we were. And it's also a shift from the old JTPA days where the focus was on transitions, but the focus was short-term, and it was taking those who were most ready to get a job and seeing how many could get the job. So I think this is fundamentally a good direction to go. Assessments. We're having changes in our content standards, changes in the focus, and so the assessments are transitioning from the old or the current into the new. And why is that? Well, content standards become the blueprint, which then curriculum, frameworks, instructional strategies, instructional materials, and assessments all build on. So without that blueprint, which are the content standards, then you will not have integrated assessments, curriculum, instructional strategies. So it's really important that we get it right. We have the adult ed, the OCTAE adult ed college and career readiness standards. We have the Common Core state standards. We have the current NRS EFLs, educational functional levels, which do not align with the college and career readiness standards. We have our WIA1 partners who right now have taken our educational functional levels, and instead of having 6 levels for ABE and 6 levels for ESL, they have created one continuum of 8 levels because it made more sense to them. So there are some national challenges ahead with regard to the content standards, the alignment of the 6 levels or the 8 levels or the 5 levels, depending on where that's headed. And it's difficult to have planned curriculum frameworks and professional development and develop the assessments if you don't have that blueprint in place. That becomes the bedrock. Funding. Last year at this time, it didn't look very good. We continue to have tight budgets, but hopeful indicators for increases. And Alex mentioned Iowa last year got state funding for the first time. Margaret just mentioned that Colorado for the first time got state funding. And we're seeing that the economy is springing back. More money is flowing into the state coffers, which means in many states more support for education and hopefully for you adult education. Technology. Each year for the last 3 years we've talked about technology. There's a shift from digital learning to open education resources, OER, that's the new buzzword. How do we incorporate that in? How does that impact our delivery of curriculum, our learning continuums, and our assessment? We've got online courses and modules that support blended learning. CASAS has done studies over the past 4 or 5 years looking at classroom-based learning, distance learning only, or blended learning. And the winner each time, blended learning. And why? Because you have more time on task, more instructional hours, not necessarily sitting in a class, but extending the learning that they're doing in class with online access 24/7. So there's not a big mystery about blended learning. If it's done well, we know that more time on task produces more learning gains. Learning via mobile devices. We're experimenting now with smartphones, with tablets, taking the learning where the learner is. Individualized learning profiles and personalized learning. Back in 1980, when we talked about competency-based education, we were all very excited to move forward with a competency-based approach, and it made more sense to us for our adult learners to teach in a context, to teach the foundation or the basic skills in the context of competencies that were relevant to our adults in everyday life. And we had research that shows that if you're learning something that you care about and it's relevant and you're going to go out and use it, you learn it faster, you learn it better, and you retain it. So there's no mystery about that. And those of us that have been in adult education for many years, it's second nature now to say, but of course it has to be adult context, but of course it has to be relevant to adult learning and their lives. But I read some articles recently that the K-12 system has discovered competency-based education. So stay tuned. Where that leads me with individualized learning profiles is that with a competency-based approach, you can create individual learning profiles. And now that we have the technology, we're able to do it more easily. Instead of those packets that we used to use, it now can be more seamless with the technology that's available. And the last big area is data management. We've really moved as a field from a paper-based system to, I now think, almost every state has an electronic data management system. This makes it a lot easier, not just for attendance and enrollment, but it makes it a lot easier to track progress, to report outcomes, and most importantly, to provide teachers with relevant, timely information in order to target instruction. So we've also moved to the cloud from local server platforms. So those of you that were beholden to your IT staff, just like in the old days we were beholden to the custodians. Now, by moving to the cloud, in many cases you're not as reliant on your district and state IT staff. Our strategies to support the states. You're going to hear today about our alignment with the CASAS content standards, to the college and career readiness standards, and in the work groups today, we'll be sharing with you our draft, what we call blueprint, for the reading standards that are going to be measured and the math standards that are going to be measured on the new assessments that are actually in progress, and we very much want your input. These are draft. If you see something that is just not in alignment with, you know, to be very important in your state, we need to know about it. With the assessment, we've always had placement, progress, and certification, but we're in the process of, with certification, taking our workforce skills certification system and moving it online, so it'll be much easier to use. And that assesses both the basic or foundation skills as well as the soft skills. I've talked a little bit about our progress. We are in the process of creating new assessments and also for placement. Transitions. We will share with you today where we are with the study, with the GED CASAS study, which we're going to start July 1, and we'll have information on that. And for those states that have adopted the HiSET, we've worked with, talked with the ETS HiSET folks, and we will be having a fall CASAS HiSET study, and we can share more about that with you. With technology, Richard Ackerman is here today to share with you our expansion of our online testing, what we're doing with tracking, and the expansion of the reporting. And professional development. It's absolutely essential that professional development be aligned with all of these new strategies. And Adriana is going to be meeting to share with the certified trainers new tools and new help to support you all in your states.